We're learning Tanya. This will be the last year on chapter 30, Perek Lamed, and we are on page Lamed Tes. We're about 5 lines from the bottom. Let me bring you up to par. What the Alter Rebbe is talking about here. Here, the Alter Rebbe is talking about not only should you be humble to every person because you don't know what they're going through and you aren't in their place. That was the first point. Number 2, you aren't actually better than them, because if you analyze your own if you analyze your own avodah in the good things that you do, you're not exerting as much effort as you can and should be to make the comparison, to say that person is a sinner because they're sinning and because the tithe is in front of them and they're not controlling themselves, and you are controlling yourself. Yes, maybe in those coarse lust-related issues of Yoshvei Kronis, etc., you're controlling yourself, but in your Asay Toiv, you are not exerting the same amount of effort. And then the Alter Rebbe said that even in Sur Meirah, if you're in the middle of a great conversation, he said Sicha No, and No represents Avram, Chesed. You don't stop. Now it's time to daven. Now it's time to learn, and maybe now it's time to answer Kaddish, etc., etc. You continue. Or the other examples the Alter Rebbe gave in issues of Sur Meirah, and he specifically spoke about issues D'Rabbanan, rabbinic enactments, where a person will tend to say, this is the Raisa, this is the Rabbanan. So by the Raisa, by biblical injunctions, by Torah injunctions, I'll follow. But by rabbinic injunctions, I'll be more lenient. So the Alter Rebbe said that's totally wrong, and he brought the Chazal, Chamurim, Divrei Soferim, Yosem, Divrei Torah, that the words of the rabbis, the sages, the scribes are more severe and strict than the words of the Torah. So that was yesterday. Then, now we're going to learn and finish the Perek where the Alter Rebbe is going to say, you're actually worse than the Kal Shebekalim. And therefore, you should be more humble. So therefore, you have to be humble to him. And therefore, what it says in Pirkei Avos, heavy, Shval Ruach B'fnei Kol Adam, Afilu Kal Shebekalim, is true. Let's see what the Alter Rebbe says. Look inside Tanya now. Let's start from the period on Lamed Tes. It's about 10 lines from the bottom, in the middle of the page. Aval Be'emes. Aval Be'emes, Imhu Yedeo Sefer, if you are truly a person who knows the book, who's scholarly and knows Torah. Number 2, and you support and you hold on to the Torah of God. And number 3, and you really seek closeness to God, then then your sin is so difficult to carry. In other words, you got a big sin, and your negligence is double. The fact that you don't wage war and overcome your Yetzer Hara in comparison to the waging of war that the Kal Shebekalim has to do. Meyashmas Kal Shebekalim, and your sin is greater than the Kal Shebekalim. Yoshvei Kronis sitting on the corners, who are distant from God. Says the Alter Rebbe, listen to this. Their sin compared to you is not so great, but the fact that they don't conquer their inclination, their Yetzer Hara, that is burning by them like a flame fire, due to they should have the fear of God, that looks and observes and sees everything they do. Nevertheless, it's not as bad. You see these words? It's not as bad as the one who's close and close to God. The closer you are to Hashem, Yoini, the more Hashem is scrupulous with you. Menashe, and therefore Hashem expects more of you. So here we are, we're thinking, oh, I became about tshuva, I'm doing tshuva, I grew up this way, now I made a positive change. It's all true. And you got a lot of reward for that. But at the same time, you're being scrutinized greater. That's what Alter Rebbe is saying here. And when Hashem scrutinizes you greater, boy, he finds those cracks and holes and issues in a greater way, and he sees them more by the person who's holier, supposedly, than the person who's not. That's what he says. Ashbas kol hakorev al Hashem ve'al terosei v'avidosev k'shmei omer Azal, as the sages say, Gabi Acher. The Gemara Chagiga says, you heard of Acher, sheyoda bekvoidi. Acher knew the kavod, the honor of God, and nevertheless he rebelled. Therefore his punishment is much greater. Therefore the Chazal say another fascinating statement regarding ignoramuses. Ami ha'oretz shezdoinois nasu lehem kishgogos, that their accidental sins are considered like, their intentional sins, their zodom is mazid. Their intentional sins, nasu lehem kishgogos, are considered like accidental. So this Chazal, the Alter Rebbe is quoting it to support his argument. What's his argument? His position is that the Kal Shebekalim doesn't know any better. The Kal Shebekalim is not seeking the closeness of God. The Kal Shebekalim is not Yodea Sefer. The Kal Shebekalim is not Machzik Hashem B'Teirosei. The Kal Shebekalim is not Korav Hashem. He's not close to God. He's a person who goes with the flow. And, so number one, remember, maybe he's there because that's his parnasa. Number two, you're not working hard in serving God the way you should be. So you are working less hard in service of God than he is working in controlling his burning Yetzer Hara, which he should be. And finally, you know better. He doesn't know better. So you're the real sinner. So the last point here in chapter 30 is when the Alter Rebbe Mamish turns the tables upside down, and he basically wipes away the thinking that I, the frum Jew, the Hasidic Jew, the learned Jew, and all that, have a right to belittle the Kal Shebekalim. And why is all this important? We spent 4 shiurim on this chapter 30, elaborating in great detail. Why is it so important? Because the Alter Rebbe is giving us advice here to feel humility. And why is it important, yearning to feel humility? So that simcha, true simcha, can be realized. And therefore, and when you'll daven, and you'll feel that true simcha, you'll have that during your davening. We learned in Tanya chapter 29 that what gets in the way is the klippa and the sitra achra that creates a blockage. And the blockage sometimes, and many times, causes us to be jaded. Right? You do the mitzvah, right? Here's Yom Kippur's coming, we're going to fast, we're going to be in shul, we're going to put on the talis, look like a malach, and the kittel, and the sneakers, and the everything. Fine, we've done all the rituals, and we have the right clothing, and the right this, and the right that. The question is, do you have a moment where you feel, you really feel inside? And many times that's blocked. It's called Timtum Halev, the blockage of the heart. So the Alter Rebbe finds ways, gives us ways, both in chapter 29 and 30, how to unblock the blockage. And the method that he uses in chapter 30, you hear, the method he uses in chapter 30 is to humble yourself. And humbling yourself means to realize that our avodah, our good deeds, is lacking big time. Because when a person understands, knows that the quality should be a certain way, and they don't live up to that quality, then, who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? They say in the name of the fourth Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Marash, the Shmuel, a fool is only fooling himself. He's not fooling anyone else. Everyone knows that he's a fool. So he thinks he's fooling. So he's only fooling himself because no one else is fooled. When we really look at ourselves and we realize how our avodah is lacking, that should put an end to any feeling of I'm better and I'm greater and I'm smarter and all that. And that's why, Menashe, even when people in shul or elsewhere, feel a certain way to us, the whole idea of comparison, whether one compares themselves to the other or the other compares themselves to you and all of that, it's a childish attitude. It's not for an adult. It's like my father is greater than your father. My brother can, hit the ball further than your brother. I mean, that's like, children, use that type of thinking. Adults don't. Hopefully they don't. And when we do, it's been childish. So like, and if you want to use that, then just think about the different analyses that the Alter Rebbe gives in chapter 30, and you'll come to the conclusion that there's nothing to brag about, nothing to feel better. Now, the fact that someone else feels a certain way towards you, you're not responsible for the way they feel to you. Because if we're going to be worried about the way people feel about us, we might as well close up shop. Okay? A person has to know what the goal is. A person has to have an understanding and a belief and a hadracha, Torah, rabbonim, mashpiyim, spouses. And once you get that, and you need to get it early on in your life, or even if you don't get it early on, whenever you get it, you go with it. You don't look back. Right? If you're climbing up a ladder and you look down, you're going to fall down. Just keep on going up. So I want to conclude this part, the formal section of Tanya, now chapter 30, and we will now start Fabrengi. Give me a second.